Chevre, was macht ihr? How are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmisch zu bruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Right now, I'm in the Shchune of the Rebbe in Brooklyn, New York. It's almost 1 a.m. We're going to start Tillim very shortly. Leil Hishane Rabbe. So we'll start with the prayer of Hishane Rabbe. Hishayna lemancha lekeinu, Hishayna. Hishayna lemancha b'reinu, Hishayna. Hishayna lemancha galeinu, Hishayna. Hishayna lemancha doshenu, Hishayna. Which means, bring us salvation for your sake, our God. Bring us salvation for your sake, our Creator. Bring us salvation for your sake, our Redeemer. Bring us salvation for your sake, our attender, or the one who searches for us. So it's Erev Shmini Atzeres and Erev Simchas Torah, and the Parsha Shavua is HaBeracha. So we're going to speak about Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres, mainly Simchas Torah, and the Parsha Shavua. Now, we mentioned already before that on one level, the central theme of all the holidays of Tishrei is the essence of a Jew. Rosh Hashanah brings out our all united because of our essence, and we all equally accept Hashem as our King. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, we bring out the essence of a Jew, which once we reach that level, it's like Lifnei Havaya to Torah. We reach a level which is even higher than God's name, essence to essence, and at that level, we're all good. Then comes Sukkot, the great equalizer. We're all united. Everyone, Ruim Kol Yisrael Leisha B'Sukkah Achas. All the Jews are worthy to fit into one sukkah. Then comes Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. When in Chutz La'aretz it's 2 days, and in Eretz Yisrael it's 1 day. So in Simchas Torah is also a day where we touch the Nekudas HaYahadas, the Pintali, the essence, which everyone is equal in relation to that level. And some of the things we're going to speak about today, we spoke about other times before. So the question in Parshas HaShavua is something that I never noticed before, and that is something absolutely amazing. When we read in the Torah, which one of the things we do, and one of the reasons for the joy of Simchas Torah is because we finish the Torah, we finish Dvarim, and from Parshas Dvarim, we go into Bereshis. We start again the Torah from Bereshis. Now, something very ironic. First of all, when we read the end of the Torah, Parshas HaBeracha, many of the Pesukim are talking about the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's quite ironic, you'd say, that in the happiest day of the year, or one of the happiest days of the year, Simchas Torah, where in a way you could say it's even greater than the joy of Purim, because in Simchas Torah, the celebration is happening in Shul. Everyone without fail, without exception, says L'chaim and dances around the Torah. Purim, there's varying degrees how much people celebrate. Some people drink more, some people drink less. But we see in Simchas Torah, the entire congregation gets involved. And what do we read in the Torah in those days, in the day of Simchas Torah, or in Eretz Yisrael Shmini Atzeres? We read verses at the end of Parshas HaBeracha, and this is how the Torah ends off, talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's passing and his burial. It says he passed on, and it speaks about what he will be remembered as. It says, Vayomer Shem Moshe Eved Hashem, Moshe passed on, and his burial. It says amazing things about him too, and we'll get to that. L'chosa Einoi, his eyes did not weaken, nor did the freshness of his skin disappear. And it says, Vayifku b'nei Yisrael Moshe, they wept. Then there was his successor Yeshua. There was never another prophet like Moshe. So you could say those were the days. Sadly, we had a Moshe. And then it says, L'chol ha'oseis v'hamoifsim, all the signs and wonders that Hashem sent him to perform. And then L'chol ha'yad ha'chazaka, L'chol ha'meira ha'godel asher asa Moshe le'nei kol Yisrael. And regarding everything carried out with his strong hands and everything performed in the fearful and great desert that Moshe did in full view of all of Israel. And Rashi brings out that he smashed the tablets. Everyone knows the talks of the Rebbe about how this was one of the greatest achievements and one of the greatest positive things he did. So I don't want to go into areas where the Rebbe spoke about. I want to focus on something which I never heard the Rebbe speak, and I'm actually astounded by it. Beyond. And that is one of the things that the Pasuk says over here, as he passed on, Vayigbar Osei V'gai, Hashem buried him in the valley, Be'eretz Moav, in the land of Moav, Mul Beis Pa'or, opposite the house of Pa'or, but no man knows his burial place until this very day. So first of all, we give the GPS. It says a bit of where he's buried. Be'eretz Moav, Mul Beis Pa'or. He buried him in the valley in the land of Moav, opposite the house of Pa'or. But no one knows where he's buried. Okay. When you look at Rashi, Rashi says something so astonishing. Opposite the house of Pa'or, it's a Gemara that his place was set aside already from the 6 days of creation. L'chaper al maaseh Pa'or, in order to atone for the sinful act of Pa'or. Whoa, what is going on over here? Here we see the self-sacrifice and the humility of a Moshe Rabbeinu. You'd think, when the Torah is discussing his legacy over here, and it does, as we see in the last verses, of the miracles and wonders that he did. So where is he buried? Opposite a church. Baal Pa'or, Maaseh Pa'or was idolatry, together with immoral acts, etc. The opposite of modesty, we're not going to elaborate. Look it up yourselves. What does it mean? What exactly constituted the idolatry of Pa'or? So the worst sin in Judaism is Gilui Arayos, Shvichas Dam, and Avodah Zarah. And here there was Gilui Arayos, and there was Avodah Zarah, the worst of the worst sins. And what is Moshe Rabbeinu's everlasting legacy? Where is he buried? He's buried opposite the church. We know the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya chapter 19 that a Jew furthers himself from K'tzei, Tumas, Avodah Zarah, like till the furthest degree. Your grandmother told you, when you pass a church, you try to cross to the other side of the road. There's Jews that spit, and I know Jews that they get all nervous and agitated if they're in a close vicinity of a church. And here, what's the great honor bestowed to Moshe Rabbeinu, that he's buried next to a church? There's many stories about how there were towns or villages that buried a holy person and he wasn't given the due respect, and there became terrible decrees against that town or village. There's many stories like that. And here we say that Moshe Rabbeinu was buried by Hashem himself opposite the church to atone for the sin of Baal Pa'or. So what's going on over here? And how can we understand it? And the answer is that over here we see the role of a Moshe Rabbeinu, the quintessential Rebbe of Bnei Yisrael, the quintessential tzaddik. That we have tzaddikim like Avraham, Yitzchak, Yankov. They have to be buried in the Moras HaMachpelah. They have to have an honorable place, and they have to have a holy place. But then we have the highest of the high. The verse says, "V'lo kom oid navi ki Moshe." And the one who in this week's parsha says, "Torah tziva lanu Moshe." Meirosha Kilas Yankov, we'll get to it soon. And what does it say about him? He's buried opposite the church. Why? Because his level, the Lamaila Adin Ketz could reach the Mata Adin Tachlis. His level is the highest of the high, is the one that can reach the lowest of the low and atone for the lowest debased debauchery act. The lowest of the low. And it's also the antidote, as we'll see. And this is the definition. This is the legacy of a Moshe Rabbeinu. He has the humility and the self-sacrifice to do whatever needs to be done to atone for every single Jew. Regardless, if that's what it takes, that he has to be buried in a place which is opposite the Avodah Zarah, then he'll do it for his people. That's a Rebbe. And we'll understand it based on another verse of this week's Parsha. We're not going to elaborate because we spoke so many times about the subject. And that's the first verse in the beginning of the Parsha, where it says, HaBeracha shaberach Moshe. This is the blessings that Moshe gave Ish ha'elihim, a man of God. As Bnei Yisrael lifnei Moshe, these are the blessings which he gave the people before he passed on. So in Judaism, we come to a very fundamental concept that the leader is a Ish Elikim. And our Maimar will tell us, Mechetze l'mayla Elikim, and Mechetze l'mata Ish. This is a way of speaking. I don't want to get into Kabbalah, Hasidus explanations. His top half, he was a god. And his lower half, he's a man. But the whole point is, he's a human being, made of flesh and blood, who feels pain, who cries, who laughs, who has empathy for the people, because he is from the people. He's a human being, he's a Ish. But he's a human being that God chose and gave phenomenal powers, and therefore he's called a Memutza HaMachaber, an intermediary which connects. That's the whole point. Only an Ish Elikim. He has one aspect, one dimension of his, that's a Ish, a human being. Another aspect which is Elikim, how he's connected to God like no one else. And therefore he could be the intermediary, the Memutza, the intermediary HaMachaber, which binds and connects. So we have a Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's the central theme of Parshas V'zeis HaBeracha. Of course, the whole Chumash, you could say, is a book about Hashem. That's one level. And I'm not trying to argue with that point, but there's another level. We call the Jewish people the people of the book. I think we can call the Torah the book of the people. As we spoke many, many times, the whole idea is everything is about Machshavtim Sheyisrael Kodma L'chol Dava. There's nothing greater, there's nothing higher, there's nothing more awesome than a Yid. And the Eibishter is for the Yidden. Lemancho, Haishayna, Lemancho, for your sake, Beireinu Ge'aleinu, for your sake, it's important. Our benefit. How could that be? Because we and Hashem are one, and Hashem is for us. Even though we serve Hashem, but we have to realize that it's Lemancha, Haishayna, Lemancha, for your sake. And the same thing is when we talk about Chumash. Chumash is a book about the people, empowerment, enlightenment. And this is the message of Parshas V'zeis HaBeracha, the whole Parsha. Hakol Hilech HaCharachitim, the end of the whole Chumash, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, is the blessings of a tzaddik. With the blessings of the tzaddik, we will keep on, and we have powers. That's number one. And it's a statement about Moshe Rabbeinu, whose greatest achievement before he passes on, blessings. Blessings is empowerment. And then we come to the last words of the Parsha. It speaks about the wonders that Moshe did, and then it speaks about how in his passing, even though the Talmud says that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't die, and Yaakov Avinu didn't die. I don't want to get into it, it's a machlokes, but it seems that the Pasuk also supports that, because even after he passes away, it says, Lechasa einev le'neslecha. His eyes did not weaken, nor did the freshness of his skin disappear. That's after it says when he passed away. So it seems like he's still alive. But we're not going to get into that now. My point is, he's still alive because of the impact, because of the powers, because of the forces, because of the energy that we're still getting from him today. How? We see that the last psukim of the Parsha talks about all the wonders that he did through him. It doesn't choose to end the Torah with verses that talk about things that are associated to Hashem himself. It could have said that God came down in the mountain and said, that he took us out of Egypt. No. It speaks about everything, obviously, that Hashem did, but through who? Through a Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's the message of the last psukim, including the fact that Moshe is buried. It comes as a climax to the whole parsha, that we're living with the words of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he gave us blessings, but also that Moshe Rabbeinu is still giving us power. And that's why, where is he buried? Even when he's buried, in his act of so-called passing, what's he doing? He's working for Am Yisrael. And he's buried opposite the church, the Avodah Zarah, the idolatry, to atone for that sin. Now, we find, first of all, there's another pasuk in the parasha which is connected to Simchas Torah. We said we're going to talk about Simchas Torah, but we already spoke about this many times, so I'm not going to elaborate. And that's obviously the pasuk in this week's parasha, and we laid it on Simchas Torah because that's the whole point. Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Meirasha kilas Yaakov. We know the first verse that a parent is supposed to teach his child is this verse. And we emphasize straight away, Torah tziva lanu Moshe. The Torah that Moshe taught us is a Meirasha inheritance to the Jewish nation. Because we must associate immediately the Torah that the Jewish nation received to Moshe Rabbeinu. Because the Torah Shabbal Peh, how do we know the correct interpretation of the Torah? We need a living embodiment. We need the ultimate role model. We need a tzaddik. We need a Rebbe that shows us how Judaism is lived and what the interpretation means. And therefore, again, in HaBeracha, in what we read on Simchas Torah, we read the first verse that every Jewish child learns. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. The Torah that Moshe taught us. And it's a Meirasha, and Meirasha means inheritance to every single Jew, because we're not talking about the Torah as the intellectual part of Torah. We're talking about Torah as godliness, as the covenant between Hashem and God, which is not about the intellect of Torah, but about the godliness in Torah, the lukus in Torah. And that's why, interestingly enough, we see one of the customs of Simchas Torah. Usually we speak about the dancing in Simchas Torah, but we have to always add a chiddush. What do we see in Simchas Torah? Everyone gets an aliyah. Not everyone. That's the only day of the year. Whoever is in shul, the men, the boys, the children, kol ha'orim, they have an aliyah. Everyone gets elevated. An aliyah means they're called up to the Torah, but an aliyah means an ascent. Every single person becomes elevated and is called up to the Torah. Why? Because we're referring to the Torah Shebechsav, Chumash, which even someone who doesn't understand the translation of the words is still fulfilling something by reading the words, because in Torah Shebechsav, everyone is considered equal because of the special level of godliness that's in Torah Shebechsav, and that makes everyone equal, from the rabbi, the treasurer, the president, the children. Everyone's the same level. No matter how unlearned you are also called to the Torah, because we're tapping into the essence of the Torah, which is connected to the essence of the Jew, which is connected to the essence of Hashem. A 5-year-old child, a 3-year-old child, a 6-month-old baby, and a 75-year-old venerable sage are all on the same level of a Jewish soul. Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Meirasha Kihilas Yaakov, to the entire congregation. So that's the connection of Simchas Torah to what we're talking about in this week's parsha and the Moshe Rabbeinu. The Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who brings out the neshama of every single Jew. That's the job description of a Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the job description of a Rebbe, more than anyone else, a tzaddik. So I want to connect this to a fascinating word that the Rebbe says in Likutei Sichos Chelik Tezayin, page 33. Sicha Ora 8. It's a Sicha of Shmois Chavdalet Tevis, and he mentions over there that the Alter Rebbe passed away on a Motzoi Shabbos. By the way, the Rebbe Rashab also passed away on a Motzoi Shabbos, and the Rebbe also passed away on a Motzoi Shabbos. So listen to what the Rebbe writes about passing away Motzoi Shabbos, what he wrote about the Alter Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab. And the question the Rebbe asks over there in footnote 8 is, why is it pointed out that the Alter Rebbe passed away on a Motzei Shabbos? Especially that there's a Maimer Azal that says that when someone passes away be'erev Shabbos, Simin Yofaloi, it's a good sign for him. But if someone passes away on a Motzei Shabbos, it says Simin Ra'aloi, it's a bad sign for him. Because if you pass away on Erev Shabbos, you go straight into Gan Eden. But if it's Motzei Shabbos, it's a different story. So the Rebbe gives a phenomenal answer. And the Rebbe's answer is Simin Yofaloi or Simin Ra'aloi. When you pass away Motzei Shabbos, it might be worse for the tzaddik. But for Tzoyin Marisoi, for his followers, for his nation, for Klal Yisrael, it's better. Because as soon as it becomes Motzei Shabbos, we need an extra infusion of positivity, of goodness, of mercy, of Gilui Elokus. The Rebbe writes that right now, for Tzoyin Marisoi, now is Kukim B'Yoser. At this point of Motzei Shabbos, we need desperately Hashpor Gilui Zeh. We need this unbelievable revelation that says that when a tzaddik passes on, is the delight of the tzaddik permeates the entire galaxy, all of the worlds, every single level is then feels the explosion of the entire accomplishments of this tzaddik throughout the entire cosmos and spiritual levels. So even though for the tzaddik himself, personally, theoretically it would have been better for him to pass on a Friday, but he passes away on a Motzei Shabbos. And we know from other places that everything that happens to a tzaddik is connected to his choice or his merit. He passes away on a Motzei Shabbos ultimately because he lives for others. He lives to bring benefit to others. Even in his passing, he doesn't think about himself. He thinks how he could better his followers. Because now the rest of the Olamis, Gan Eden or whatever, the Neshama Yisera goes away. So now this tzaddik is going to bring benefit and help everyone in Gan Eden and whatever through his passing away, Dafkan and Motzei Shabbos. So that's an example we see, and we think about it, it gives you such a tremble of how we have to feel indebted to the Rebbe, to the tzaddik, that even in his passing, he doesn't think about himself whatsoever. You think, could he ever choose something for himself? I don't want to, for lack of a better word, even though we say they don't die, could he die in peace? He's not dead, but I'm saying the answer is no. It's never about him. It's never about what's better for him. It's always, always, always what's better for the people. And obviously these are the greatest tzaddikim, and I believe in the end what they do better for people shows how they're on the highest level. And the same thing is true over here with Moshe Rabbeinu. He doesn't have to have the honor that he chooses to be in a nice place, in an honorable place, Mizr Zayt, Harazeisim, Moritz HaMachpelah. No. Where is he buried? And the verse itself says it. He's buried Mol Beis Par. And why? To bring benefit over there. And the lesson is, number one, that Moshe Rabbeinu, the tzaddik, for a chassid, this means learning the chassidus of this tzaddik, learning his Torahs, learning Likutei Sichos, following on his ways, learning Rambam. That is the antidote to Avodah Zarah. There's connection and disconnection. There's decadence and there's morality. And being connected to the tzaddik, and this is the message the Torah is giving us, Now, even though the Torah mentions that Yeshua came afterwards, but as we mentioned previously, Rashi, Yeshua was so much a disciple of Moshe that it was Moshe's influence continuing through Yeshua. And the same thing we have to know, every single person has to have a Selach Rav. You have to have someone who's your moral, spiritual guide, teacher, and leader. And this is the message that we take on Simchas Torah. Someone who could reveal your neshama. And that's what the Rebbe explains in the Maim of Atat Tetzaveh, that the job description of a Rebbe is to reveal the neshama of every single Yid. And that's what Simchas Torah is about. And I'll just finish with two stories. One story is a story with the Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe. His Chassidim were completely into Chassidus, and the Mittel Rebbe, the second Lubavitch Rebbe, poured Chassidus. So just to give you an image of the sort of Chassidim Mittel Rebbe had, there's a story that there were two or three of them that were reviewing a discourse that the Mittel Rebbe had said, and they were so caught up in reviewing this Chassidic discourse, they were talking about it on the street, and it began raining, and they jumped into the nearest building, and they realized they jumped into a church. So they came to the Mittel Rebbe, one of them at least came to the Mittel Rebbe and asked for a tikkun, and he told them the story was that they were reviewing Chassidus, and they jumped into a church, and they brought Chassidus, the highest of the high, the secrets of the Torah, into a church. And when the Mittel Rebbe heard it in this private audience to the Chassid, he began laughing from joy that his Chassidim was so immersed in this thought, in the depth of Teres Chassidus, that they didn't even realize where they jumped into. And the Rebbe says, when he says the story, I think it's Parshas Vayetze, Topshin Yutes, the Rebbe says the laugh of the Mittel Rebbe was able to atone and take care of the whole problem. This was also one of the job descriptions of Rebbe starting from the times of the Baal Shem Tov, that they were able to make tikkunim. If there was a person who'd sinned or did something wrong, they went to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik gave the person the guidance how to atone. So in this case, the Mittel Rebbe's laugh washed away, purified, atoned the problem that they had brought Chassidus into a church. Similar to the story over here, it's the Rebbe, the Moshe Rabbeinu, and precisely a Moshe Rabbeinu that could be the antidote to the idea of the idolatry, both in the sense that it prevents such a lifestyle, but also that it atoned for those Jews that had acted over there, as Rashi says. There's another story which is a phenomenal story, and I don't know if I ever said it before. You should watch it. There's an interview on Gem Media with a Rabbi Biderman, and it concerns a very famous person, and that is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a very famous psychiatrist who wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning, that became a bestseller. He used to give a donation to Chabad of Vienna, Chabad of Austria. And why? So Rabbi Yaakov Biderman didn't understand it, but he got a donation from Viktor Frankl every single year. But he didn't pay attention to it. One day, an older woman showed up to his Chabad house, and she wanted to see Rabbi Biderman. And Rabbi Biderman let her into the Chabad house, and she says, "My name is Margarita Chayes." And she tells Rabbi Biderman, "You think you were the first emissary of Chabad in Austria? I was." And then she tells him the following story. When I was a young girl, I don't know what year this is, maybe in the early 50s. When I was a young girl, I had an audience with the Rebbe. And I told the Rebbe that I go from time to time to Austria, to Vienna. The Rebbe said, next time you're going to Austria, please let the office know over here. I have a mission for you. So a couple of months later, she notified the Rebbe's secretary that she's going to Austria, and the Rebbe, she was called to the Rebbe again, and the Rebbe told her that I would like you to visit Professor Frankl, Viktor Frankl, and give him the message that he shouldn't despair, he should be strong, not to take the ridicule to heart, and continue to spread your teachings, and you will achieve a breakthrough. That was the message. Anyways, she went to Vienna, she went to Austria, she looked up the address of Professor Viktor Frankl. She came to the house and she knocked on the door, and a woman opened up the door and she didn't seem to be Jewish. And when the door was open, she noticed that in the living room there's a cross, there's a crucifix. And she's thinking to herself, it's very strange. The Rebbe is sending me to such a house to send a message to Professor Viktor Frankl. And she asks, does Professor Frankl live here? And the woman who opened the door said, yes, 1 minute. And Professor Viktor Frankl came to the door and she said, can I speak to you? And he says, yes. And she said, I have a message from you, from Rabbi Schneerson, from Brooklyn, New York, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And all of a sudden his face became serious and he says, come in. And she says, and what's the message? And Viktor Frankl asks her, so what's the message? And she says that the Rebbe told me to tell you that you should be strong, don't get affected by the ridicule, you're going to achieve a breakthrough, keep on teaching, stay in your position, and be strong. Anyways, she says that I reacted in such a way that she hadn't seen an adult react in such a way. He sat down, he started crying. He says, give me a moment to compose, to come to himself. And then he says to her, I want to show you something. And he takes out papers and he says, you see these papers? These are immigration papers to Australia. Right now, I was feeling so crushed, so decimated, that I wasn't accepted by the mainstream psychiatry and psychology department, schools of thought. At that time, Freud was the standard. And he was going a whole different way. That man essentially is good and is seeking values and meaning and purpose. And he founded, as I mentioned before, I think, logotherapy, which looks at a person and says that this is what drives man. Man's search for meaning. And at this time, right now, the other professors, other students of Freud, and Freud himself, who wasn't alive at that time, but still, people going his ways, were not accepting at all this idea of Viktor Frankl. So he had immigration papers prepared to just go to Australia, start life anew in another part of the world, far, far away. But he said, now that I got this message from Rabbi Schneerson, I see there's a sign, and I'm going to continue here and listen to that message. That was the story. Rabbi Biderman said that he wanted to confirm the story. So after he heard the story from the lady, I don't know how much longer afterwards, he called Viktor Frankl on the phone and he wanted to meet him, but Viktor Frankl was too weak to meet with Rabbi Biderman. So Rabbi Biderman said that he heard the story, he wants to confirm it, and he asked Viktor Frankl, does the Lubavitcher Rebbe mean anything to you? So Viktor Frankl said, of course. And he said these words in German. I owe him a great deal. I respect the Rebbe greatly. He helped me at a very critical moment. That's the way Rabbi Biderman says the story. And those are the words that Viktor Frankl told Rabbi Biderman. And that's the story. Now, to me, what I find amazing about the story, by the way, Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp. He had a Jewish wife, and they were murdered. I don't remember if he had any children. And he remarried a Gentile. I think, by the way, there was someone who looked into his life and he put on tefillin every day and he found his tefillin. Don't quote me on this, but look into it. But what's amazing about the story, and here you see the koyach of a Rebbe. The Rebbe, the Moshe Rabbeinu, is able to bypass the cross, the crucifix, and the fact that he's married to a Gentile. And here's a Jew in anguish who has a message to give to the world, a powerful message that's going to bring benefit to millions. This book is a very famous bestseller. It's been translated in tens of languages. And the Rebbe felt that this message was very important for mankind. And the Jew was the one who was going to bring this message to the world. So the Rebbe, the koyach of the Rebbe, the Moshe Rabbeinu, the etzem of the Rebbe's neshama, could reach out and bypass, penetrate, pierce whatever barriers are in the way, even a crucifix, even a Baal Pa'er, and go into that situation and bring light and arouse it and stimulate it and produce the greatest empowerment and message and positivity that the world needs. The Eibishter should help. As we say on Hoshana Rabbah, everyone should have a good kvittel. This is a day which we have the chsima, the final chsima. Hoshayno leman choelikeinu. Hoshayno, with the ultimate Hoshana Rabbah, the great salvation. Begula mitzvah shleima, take from Yad Mamish. Good yontiv, good yontiv, good yontiv. Posting from the Rebbe Shchuna, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in the Shchuna.